Hi, and welcome to the second in the VBA series that I'm doing for VBA for Excel. Now in this one what we're going to do is we're going to look at a slightly more complicated macro recording that we can do. The last one was a very simple one, oversimplistic, and not something that you'd actually do. This second one is going to be an example of something that you might actually do. Now to start with, we're going to start recording a macro. Now remember, we can go down there or to the developer room. If you're used to doing it, you can just go down there. So we're going to break this down into steps, and I'm going to call this one open file. I am going to save it in this workbook. Now you'll notice that I've saved this as SecondMacro, and it is an Excel macro enabled workbook. So I'm going to click OK. Now what I want to do is I want to record myself opening a file. So file, open. It's one that I've looked at recently, so it's that one there, pivots. Brings up a load of data. Now I've opened that file, I want to stop recording. I'm now going to actually take this file and I'm going to record another macro of me doing something to this file, like turning it into a pivot table. So let me just have a look down here. There's a whole bunch of people, holiday packages they went on, and how they paid. So let's have a look and see how people paid, by which month, and how much money they paid. So let's record ourselves turning that into a pivot table. Now you'll notice that this is already a table, and that does make it slightly easier for us to turn this into a pivot table. So I'm going to start recording, and we're going to call this one Produce Pivot, or perhaps pivot if you can't spell. Produce Pivot, saved in this workbook, and click OK. So from here, summarize with pivot table. We're going to put it onto a new worksheet and click OK. There it is, and what I said was month paid down in the rows, payment method down in the columns, and the amount in the values. So we can see in each month who paid by what method. Now let's just format the numbers here, and let's turn it into currency with no decimal places. So that's now a little bit more meaningful, and we stop recording. Straight away again, we're now going to start recording, and this one we're going to call Save as PDF. And again, in this workbook, click OK. What we now want to do is File, Save As, and we want to put this on the desktop again, and we want to save it as a PDF. And click Save. Now you'll notice that dotted line that's appeared, which actually lets me know that this is a reasonable size, so it's small enough to fit on the PDF. And now stop recording. Now, if we have a look at the code, so if I go into the code on this sheet, there'll be nothing there, because the code is actually not recorded. It's not saved on this sheet. It should be saved on the other one. But what you may notice is that after I saved the first one, which was on there, on each sheet when I recorded the macro, I started recording from this one. So although it looked the same, and I was saying this workbook each time, on the first one it saved it on this workbook, which was SecondMacro, but after the first one opened another sheet. That then became my active sheet, and so every single time I saved it on this sheet, it was actually saving it in a different workbook. But that's not an issue, because what we can do is when we go into the code itself, you'll notice that there are modules here on that OK Pivots one, and that's where it's got the Produce Pivot and the Save As, but also back here in the first one, so here in SecondMacro, and it's in there, this is the one where it opens a file. Okay, now just to show you how you can copy from one to another, if I go into this one and simply select all and copy and paste the whole lot in there, you'll notice that we can actually have multiple macros or multiple subroutines within a module. So this module here I'm going to rename as SecondMacro, and I'm actually going to remove all of the other modules. So I'm going to remove and not save anywhere else. So this one here as well I'm going to remove and not save. Okay, so now I have those 3 different modules. What I can do is close this file down. I don't need to save it. So all I have now is this one here called SecondMacro, which is the one we started off with. Now if I want to actually run any one of those macros, what I can do is just go to Macros here and choose which one I want to run. So if I say I want to run that one, it goes through the process of opening that file. Now, here's where we have to be slightly careful, because if I go back to this sheet and try to run produce pivot, it's going to try and do it in this file. That's not going to work. I need to actually run it in the other file, and the reason is it tries to find a table which there simply isn't in macro 1. Okay, so if I go into, if I just have to stop that, if I go back into this Oaks pivot one and run macro 2, which was produce pivot, this time that will work because it can do it in that file. Likewise, if I want to do the third one, if I want to save as a PDF, that would actually work on both of them. But in the first instance, in other words back over here, my PDF would be empty because there's nothing in this file. If I save this as a PDF, it will actually save it as a PDF, and it will be my report that it saves as a PDF. Let's just have a look at that. Save as a PDF, run, and it does it, and it saves it as a PDF. And it's actually overwritten the other one. So if I just go down to the desktop, you'll see there's the pivots PDF. And if I just double click on it so that it opens it up, you'll notice there is the PDF produced for me to see. Now, the beauty of this comes when we run these 3 macros one after the other. So what I'm going to do now is something even cleverer. I'm going to record myself running a macro and then running another macro and then running another macro. So this one we're going to call master macro. Obviously when you're doing yours, don't call all of your master macros master macro. Give them a decent name. So I'm running this macro, and what I'm going to do first of all is open the file, run. It's telling me the table is already open. That's fine. It's going to reopen it. I should have actually closed it first. What I'm now going to do is run another macro. And remember, it's still recording. See, it says stop recording. So it's still recording me running the macro. Produce the pivot. I'm going to run another macro to save as a PDF. And only when I've done that last thing will I then stop recording. Now, I can close that file down, not have it open, I don't need it. I've just got this one here, and you'll notice how simple the code is for that last one we recorded. It's basically just master macro, and it says run the first one, run the second one, and then run the third one. So actually all I want to do is this lot here, which will run all 3. So back on my sheet, I've got 3 different ways that I want to show you that I can actually run a macro. So the first would be to go up here to macros, choose that master macro and say run. I don't want to do that. It's a bit of a long-winded way of doing it, particularly when the macro is recorded on this workbook, which means it'd be quite handy if I had something here, or like a button, where I can say, actually, I want my master macro add, and if I don't like that icon, because you notice that all of these macros have the same icon, I can just go into modify and change it into something else if I want. Now I can just click on there to actually run my macro. The way that I prefer is actually, if we have the macro saved on a workbook, I like to create some buttons on the workbook themselves. And if I right click on it and say assign macro, I can assign the master, or any of the individual buttons. I could have 3 separate buttons, one for each macro. But that, you'd have to be careful that it would then change workbook to the other workbook when it wanted to produce the pivot or save as a PDF. Just remember, this one, by opening the file, I will already be in the file that I need to produce the pivot from and save as a PDF. So do be careful if you are putting buttons on here as to which file they're pointing to. So I want master macro and I'll click OK. Now when I just click on that button, it opens the file, turns it into a pivot table and saves it as a PDF. And again, if I shrink that lot down, I can see there's pivots here. Just to prove it working, I'll delete that file. Let's go back into here and let's make sure this time we close pivots. Don't need to save it. And I'm going to run that PDF report. So there you go. And now when we go back, you'll see that there's the file and it's generated a PDF report. Okay. As I said, this was a way of showing you how to do a more complicated macro, and this one we've broken down into 3 steps. We're still recording a macro. Yeah. So we're not actually writing any VBA code yet, even though we're taking a look at the VBA code. And there is a reason for this. And the main reason is, however good you get at writing VBA code, don't ever be afraid to stop and record a macro if you're not sure about the syntax for something that you want to do in Excel. So if you're actually doing pure VBA, that's different. But if it's something that you want to do within the application, in other words within Excel, just stop, record yourself a macro, and then copy and paste the code into your VBA. Okay, I do hope this has been useful. And if you have any questions or anything that you'd like to learn how to do in VBA, just pop me a question down below. And don't forget to like and subscribe. And thank you for listening.